You know the phrase, the victors write history, but someone has to photograph it first. May 1945. Berlin smolders. The Reich security main office on Prince Albrecht Strasse lies in rubble. Smoke rises from basement furnaces, still warm from burning paper. Allied troops pour through shattered doorways, finding filing cabinets ripped open, ash piles 3 feet deep, and scattered photographs that somebody tried to destroy but ran out of time. The Gestapo kept millions of photographs, mugshots of prisoners, surveillance images, identification cards with faces and numbers, documentation of arrests, interrogations, deportations. Every person they hunted got photographed. 3 poses: front, left side, right side, name, number, crime. The system was German efficiency turned to terror. The question nobody asks is this: what happened to all those faces? If you value documented 20th century history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the United States National Archives collection of foreign records. Seized Record Group 242 published, August 2016 by, and the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum's archival documentation on prisoner photographs, published 2023. These aren't secondary sources. These are the institutions that hold the physical evidence. Now, back to the information. January 27, 1945. Soviet troops march through the gates of Auschwitz. They find 7,000 prisoners, skeletons in striped uniforms. The SS evacuated 60,000 more on death marches west days before. In Block 26, they discover a photography lab. The Erkennungsdienst, identification service, subordinate to the Politische Abteilung, the Camp Gestapo. This lab produced registration photographs of every prisoner incorporated into Auschwitz from February 1941 to January 1945. Wilhelm Brasse ran the lab. Prisoner number 3444, Polish, professional photographer from Żywiec. The SS grabbed him in August 1940 and made him document their machine. Brasse took 3 poses of each arrival: front with cap, left profile, right profile, camp number visible, triangle color marking category, political, criminal, a social, Jew. The lab processed up to 200,000 photographs, maybe more. Nobody counted while it operated. The Nazis planned to photograph all 400,000 registered prisoners at Auschwitz-Birkenau. They got partway through before the system collapsed. January 1945. Evacuation orders come down. Bernhard Walter, SS Hauptscharführer, head of Erkennungsdienst. He tells Brasse and Bronisław Jureczek to burn everything. Every photograph, every negative, all documentation. The 2 men feed wet photo paper into the furnace first, then stacks of photographs, then negatives. The volume is so vast the smoke can't escape. The fire chokes itself out. Walter leaves the room. Brasse and Jureczek pull photographs from the furnace. 38,916 images survive. They scatter them through the lab, board up the door. The Soviets arrive. The photographs are saved, but 38,000 out of 200,000 or more. That's less than 20%. 160,000 faces burned to ash, gone. No record they existed except transport lists and selection rosters. After liberation, the photographs sit in bags at the camp. Former prisoner Josef Dziura, number 1148, helps pack them. They go to a photographer in Korzów, Semrau, or Nor. Sources conflict on the name. Then to the Polish Red Cross office in Krakow on Świętej Anny Street. 1947. The newly established State Museum in Oświęcim takes possession. Karol Radecki catalogs them. Former prisoner number 3011, senior archivist. He writes notes on the backs. Names, birth dates, transport dates, death dates when known. Pencil and ink annotations that become the only identification for thousands. The collection holds 31,969 photographs of men, 6,947 photographs of women. Each person photographed in striped prison uniform or sometimes civilian clothes if they were new arrivals. Bottom left corner shows camp number, ETAS, nationality, category marking, and reference, KL Auschwitz. These are the only photographic evidence that thousands of prisoners existed. Now Berlin. May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders. The Reich security main office no longer exists as a functioning entity. Its headquarters at number 8 Prince Albrecht Strasse took direct hits from Allied bombers between 1940 and 1945. American photographer William Vandevert documents the ruins in July 1945. He flies over Berlin from Tempelhof Airport on July 9 and 10. Shot, aerial views showing complete devastation. The Gestapo headquarters appears as a hollow shell, walls standing, roof collapsed. Interior gutted by fire. Behind it sits the damaged Anhalter Bahnhof train station. British bombers dropped 45,517 tons of bombs on Berlin. Americans added 23,000 tons, 600,000 apartments destroyed. The Gestapo building burns with everything inside, but not everything burned at the same time or in the same way. The Reich Security Main Office maintained files across multiple locations: field offices, regional headquarters, occupied territories. Each location kept its own photographic documentation. When Allied forces advanced, different offices responded differently. Some burned everything, some packed files and fled, some abandoned records in place. April 1945. U.S. counterintelligence war room issues priority target lists. They want Nazi intelligence officials. RSHA amped. 6 foreign intelligence officers topped the list. Then security police and SD units from occupied countries. Gestapo officials come farther down. The war room instruction to interrogators of captured RSHA officers lists top missing persons. Where are Schellenberg, Ohlendorf, Muller, Steimle, Sandberger? 4 of those 5 men eventually get located and interrogated. Heinrich Müller, Gestapo chief, he disappears. May 1945 in Berlin. Never confirmed dead, never confirmed alive. The man who signed off on photographing millions vanishes without a photograph to identify his body. A war room report covering the period ending June 18, 1945, states no leading Gestapo officials have been arrested yet. It seems clear Müller remained in Berlin after the collapse. Other Gestapo leaders fled south. His fate contrasts with theirs. In 2013, Johannes Tuckel, head of the Memorial to the German Resistance, claims Müller's body was found in August 1945 by a work crew cleaning corpses, one of 3,000 buried in a mass grave on a former Jewish cemetery site in Berlin-Mitte. Never confirmed. The mystery of Müller's end nourishes the mysterious power the Gestapo still elicits. But the photographs, where do they go? The U.S. military designates all seized SS organization records as Record Group 1010, Himmler Collection. They arrange records by organization using an improvised filing scheme German archival authorities designed but never implemented, the Einheitsaktenplan. Under this scheme, RSHA records get designated EAP 173-B. Subordinate offices get subordinate numbers. EAP 173-B-16-05 identifies records of RSHA Amped 4, Gestapo, Section Opposition, and Sabotage. The U.S. National Archives, collectively accessions, captured German records as Record Group 242, National Archives collection of foreign records seized. They microfilmed the collections between 1960 and 1961 as National Archives Microfilm Publication T175, records of the Reich leader of the SS and chief of the German police. The project involves over 70,000 rolls of microfilm. Most original paper records eventually returned to their countries of origin: the Bundesarchiv in Germany, archives in Austria, Poland, occupied territories, but microfilm copies remain in Washington, D.C. at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. Inside those microfilmed collections sit photographic reproductions, card files from Copenhagen Gestapo headquarters. The Americans document their origin: 11 consecutive folders containing photostatic reproductions of card files regarding known or suspected Allied agents. 1939 to 1944. The originals came from the Gestapo headquarters building in Copenhagen. The identified agents include German nationals and citizens of occupied Denmark and Norway and neutral Sweden, biographical data, espionage activities, intelligence contacts, Communist Party membership, arrest records, some photographs included, much information originated with German Abwehr offices, many references cite documents subsequently destroyed. Each card measures 5 3/4 inches by 3 1/2 inches, agent name and rank, training center location, physical description sometimes, information source identification, internal RSHA filing designation, probably arranged alphabetically by surname initially, but now unarranged, except an effort groups all A surnames together at the beginning. 314 cards. Dates range: September 1941 to December 1944. Another collection: 15 folders containing photostatic reproductions of wanted lists, Geheimes Fahndungsblatt through February 1940. Then Geheimes Sammelrundschreiben über Landesverratsbekämpfung, lists for individuals suspected of espionage, issued by Gestapo Abteilung 3, later by RSHA 4E, received by Staatspolizeistelle Münster, July 1939 through December 1940. The series terminated December 1940, each list arranged by nationality: French, British, Soviet Russian, Dutch, then by suspect name, variable biographical data, sometimes including photographs, lists supplemented by case summaries, arrests of suspects from previous lists, new reports on suspects with little biographical data available. The photographs exist as photostat reproductions, not originals, copies of copies, black and white, grainy, faces reduced to documentation. No context beyond the data card. Who were these people? Where did they end up? The files don't always say. Many cards reference documents destroyed. February-March 1945. The last weeks before collapse. Burn orders go out. Not everywhere executes them the same way. Copenhagen. The Gestapo headquarters gets abandoned. Files left in place. Allies seize them intact. These card files survive because nobody had time to burn them, or orders never reached the building in the chaos. Vienna? Different story. 2000. A chance discovery in the municipal and provincial archives of Vienna. Wienerstadt and Landesarchiv. Workers find the photographic index of the Vienna Gestapo. 12,000 individuals arrested by Vienna Gestapo for various reasons. Police photographs and information on each person. The documentation archive of the Austrian resistance. Documentations Archiv des Österreichischen Widerstandes, or DOW, takes possession. 2001, they scan the images, publish a sample of over 2,000 records on their website. The whole index includes 1,500 records on Jewish citizens, 450 consultable online. How did this collection survive? Vienna Gestapo was the largest regional headquarters in the German Reich. Over 900 staff members, more arrests than any other regional headquarters. Over 50,000 people between 1938 and 1945. The Hotel Metropole on Morsenplatz served as headquarters. After the war, the building gets replaced. The Leopold Fiegelhof stands there now, named after a political prisoner who survived Dachau. Memorial rooms in the rear honor victims. A granite and bronze installation on the square's north corner bears the inscription Niemals vergessen, never forget. But the photographic index, why wasn't it destroyed? The Americans and Soviets divided Vienna, different occupation zones, different record seizure priorities. Some archives got packed and shipped to Moscow, some stayed in Vienna under Austrian control, some fell through bureaucratic cracks. The photographic index sat in the municipal archives for 55 years, forgotten, misfiled, or deliberately hidden by Austrian archivists who knew what they had and protected it from destruction or repatriation demands. Now Cologne, the EL de Haus, Appellhofplatz 23 through 25. Cologne Gestapo headquarters, from December 1935 to March 1945. The building survives, basement prison preserved, around 1,800 wall inscriptions by prisoners from 1943 to 1945. The cell's accessible as a memorial since 1981, permanent exhibition opened 1997, Cologne under National Socialism. The NS Documentation Center of the city of Cologne operates here, largest local memorial for National Socialism victims in Germany. The center maintains an image archive, around 125,000 objects from the 1870s to present, mainly photographs and photo albums, also printed image media, posters, postcards, cigarette collectors, pictures, advertising stamps, graphic art, paintings. The collection documents Cologne's history under the Nazi regime, persecution and resistance, the confrontation with Nazi era after 1945, remembrance culture. Where do these photographs come from? Private collections mostly, families who kept albums, survivors who donated materials, former forced laborers, Jewish former residents who returned for visit programs starting in the 1980s, some from seized Gestapo files. But the Cologne Gestapo's own photographic documentation, the systematic prisoner photographs, those burned. Allied bombing raids between 1940 and 1945 destroyed much of Cologne's center. The Gestapo headquarters took hits. The research department works on reconstructing archival materials, destroyed during the war and at the end of the war. They pieced together fragments. Cross-reference testimonies, but the core photographic records, gone. Same story repeats across occupied Europe. Dresden, the Continental Hotel, served as Gestapo headquarters from 1938. British Royal Air Force bombed Dresden February 13 to 14, 1945. 18,000 to 25,000 dead. Firestorm. The Gestapo headquarters destroyed along with its records. The remand prison at Münchner Platz damaged. The remand prison on Mathildenstrasse destroyed. Dresden Gestapo was responsible for deporting and murdering nearly 1,000 Jewish residents. After the bombing, no photographs, no files, just memorials and a small steel number plate in the sidewalk. A Mondepot, memorial repository. The number links online to a description of the former persecution site, Paris. The Gestapo operated from 84 Avenue Foch, headquarters for SIPO SD France, Security Police and Security Service. They interrogated resistors, tortured prisoners, coordinated deportations. The building stands today, used as an apartment complex. No memorial marker, no preserved records on site. And what happened to the Paris Gestapo photographs? Some captured by French authorities, some destroyed before liberation. August 1944, Paris rises, street fighting. German forces retreat. The Carling, French Gestapo collaborators, 30,000 to 32,000 members. They conducted operations nearly indistinguishable from their German equivalents. When Paris falls, they destroy files, burn photographs, execute informants who know too much. Between 14 November 1945 and 3 October 1946, the International Military Tribunal tries them. 21 defendants, but the documentary evidence is incomplete. Too many photographs turned to ash in those final chaotic days. Now, Prague. Spring 1942. The Gestapo discovers a cache of Polish intelligence documents. They're surprised. Polish agents and informants had been gathering detailed military information, smuggling it to London via Budapest and Istanbul. The Poles identified and tracked German military trains to the Eastern Front, identified 4 order police battalions sent to occupied Soviet areas in October 1941, battalions that engaged in war crimes and mass murder. Polish agents gathered detailed information about German soldier morale in the East. The Gestapo concludes Polish intelligence activity represents a very serious danger to Germany. June 6, 1944. Heinrich Müller sets up Sonderkommando Jersey, special unit designed to root out the Polish intelligence network in Western and Southwestern Europe. But here's the thing. The Gestapo documents this. They photograph documents, make photostat copies, file them. Those files get captured. They're in record group 242 now. But the original Polish intelligence photographs, the faces of the agents, most destroyed. The Gestapo killed the agents, burned their files. The photostat reproductions in American archives show text, document layouts. But agent faces? Rare. The Gestapo protected their intelligence even in documentation. Faces got excised, burned separately. Only code names and operational details survived. The pattern emerges. Systematic photography during Nazi control. Systematic destruction at the end, but the destruction wasn't complete. It didn't happen uniformly. 3 variables determined what survived. Time. Did the office have enough time to execute burn orders? Bombing? Did Allied bombs destroy the building and its files before evacuation? Capture? Did advancing forces seize the facility intact with files in place? Auschwitz. Time ran out. Bombing not a factor. Soviets captured intact. 38,916 photographs survive. Copenhagen, time sufficient. No bombing. Seized intact. Card files survive. Vienna, time sufficient. Bombing, yes. But photographic index evacuated to city archives. Survives. Cologne, bombed. Headquarters destroyed. Records burned in fires. Nothing survives. Dresden, bombed. Firestorm. Everything destroyed. Berlin, bombed repeatedly. Headquarters ruined. Muller disappears. Most files destroyed. The mathematics is brutal. Start with millions of photographs, end with tens of thousands, maybe 1 to 5% survival rate across all Gestapo offices combined. The faces that survived did so by accident, geography, timing. Individual choices by prisoners like Brasse, who sabotaged burn orders, archivists who misfiled collections, Allied soldiers who grabbed file boxes before command structure determined disposition. After the war, the Americans established the Berlin Document Center, 1945. The center centralizes documents from the Nazi period, needed for Nuremberg Trials preparation. The BDC remains under American administration until 1994. Then the German Federal Archives, Bundesarchiv, takes control. The entire collection gets microfilmed. Made available at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. Researchers gain access without traveling to Germany. The Berlin Document Center collection includes personnel records of the NSDAP and affiliated organizations, party members from 1920 to 1945. Arranged by organization, then alphabetically by family name, some phonetically. Massive undertaking. The biographic records include some photographs, party membership photos, SS identification photos, but Gestapo operational photographs, the surveillance images, the prisoner mugshots from field offices, those stay scattered across multiple record groups, multiple archives, multiple countries. No unified catalog exists, listing every surviving Gestapo photograph. November 2019, 45. The International Military Tribunal opens at Nuremberg, prosecuting 24 major war criminals and 7 organizations, crimes against peace, war crimes, crimes against humanity. The prosecutors need evidence, documents, testimonies, and photographs. Military photographers from all Allied forces documented concentration camp liberations, Dachau, Buchenwald, Bergen-Belsen, Mauthausen. The images shock the world: piles of corpses, emaciated survivors, crematorium ovens, mass graves. These become the photographic record of Nazi crimes. But prisoner identification photographs, the systematic documentation the Gestapo created, that appears rarely at Nuremberg. Why? Because most of it burned. The prosecution uses what survives: transport lists, selection rosters, statistical summaries. The Korher report compiled by an SS statistician: 2,454,000 Jews deported to extermination camps or murdered by Einsatzgruppen. The complete status reports of Einsatzgruppen death squads found in Gestapo archives when searched by the US Army. These reports list an additional 1,500,000 murders during mass shootings. But faces, individual identification photos, proving this person was arrested on this date for this reason and sent to this place, that level of documentation mostly doesn't survive. The Nuremberg prosecutors work with what they have: Wannsee conference protocols, train schedules, photographs from the Auschwitz album, the Sonderkommando photographs, 4 blurred images taken secretly in August 1944 inside Auschwitz, a Jewish prisoner from Greece, usually named only as Alex, possibly Alberto Herrera, Greek military officer, member of the Sonderkommando. He took 2 shots from inside a gas chamber, 2 outside, shot from the hip, couldn't aim the camera. The Polish resistance smuggled the film out in a toothpaste tube. Hidden by Helena Danton, who worked in the SS canteen, 4 photographs proving the gas chambers and cremation pits existed. 4 photographs out of hundreds of thousands of victims. The trial runs from November 1945 to October 1946. 19 defendants convicted. 12 received death penalty. Hermann Göring, Hans Frank, Wilhelm Frick, Ernst Kaltenbrunner, Joachim von Ribbentrop, Alfred Rosenberg, Fritz Sauckel, Arthur Zeiss, Inquart, Julius Streicher, Alfred Jodl, Wilhelm Keitel, Martin Bormann in absentia. The verdicts rest on documentary evidence, paper trails, orders, reports, statistical summaries, film footage of concentration camps. The photographs provide visual proof, but the individual prisoner photos, the systematic Gestapo documentation, that absence gets noted. Prosecutors wish they had more. They work with what survived. After Nuremberg, the United States conducts 12 additional trials. Subsequent Nuremberg proceedings, 1946 to 1949. 199 defendants tried, 161 convicted, 37 sentenced to death. These trials dig deeper into Nazi bureaucracy: doctors, judges, industrialists, Einsatzgruppen commanders. The prosecutors continue building cases from captured documents, the interrogation records prepared for war crimes. Proceedings get microfilmed. National Archives, microfilm publication M1270, 31 rolls. These include some photographs, mostly of defendants, not of victims. The prosecution exhibits submitted to the International Military Tribunal get preserved. Microfilm publication T988. 54 rolls. The exhibits include photographs, concentration camp images, execution scenes, but again, the systematic Gestapo prisoner photographs, limited representation, the bulk didn't survive to exhibit. The British face similar challenges. They captured German Foreign Ministry documents, period 1867 to 1945, smaller number of Italian documents covering Mussolini's time, files from Japanese embassies in Berlin and Rome, spring 1945. Specially created Anglo-American expert teams searched Germany for archives, looking for documents about war origins, German operations, war aims. They assemble several tons of German Foreign Ministry documents found in the Harz Mountains, Thuringia, Marburg Castle. Summer 1948. The collection ships to Britain. Housed at Whaddon Hall in Buckinghamshire, the German War Documents Project begins. British and United States governments set it up 1946. French join later. They microfilm the collection. Records designated GFM at the UK National Archives. Until 1952, only official representatives of British, US, and French governments have access. After 1952, universities and scholars get permission, mainly for pre-1920 records. The project processes diplomatic and political documents. But Gestapo operational photographs, those weren't part of foreign ministry files. Different bureaucratic stream, different disposition. Now look at what happened in Eastern Europe. Soviet forces captured Berlin. They occupied East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. The Soviets seized enormous quantities of Nazi documents, shipped trainloads of files to Moscow. The Trophy Archive, Osobi Archive, Special Archive. The collections remained closed to Western researchers for decades. Cold War barriers. Even after the Soviet Union collapses in 1991, access remains restricted. Russian archives slowly open, piece by piece, but comprehensively cataloging what the Soviets seized. That process continues to this day. Some Gestapo photographs went to Moscow. Which ones? Nobody in the West knows for certain until Russian archives fully open. Estimates suggest the Soviets captured millions of pages of documents, thousands of photographs, from Berlin, from regional headquarters across occupied territories. What percentage survived the initial capture? How much was destroyed by retreating Germans? How much did the Soviets later discard as irrelevant? The full accounting remains incomplete. Here's what we know. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. maintains the largest publicly accessible collection of Holocaust-related photographs. Their photo archives include images from multiple sources: liberations, deportations, ghettos, camps. The museum actively seeks donations. Every day, World War II veterans and families uncover photographs from the war. The museum evaluates each submission, compares against known images, adds new material when it proves unique. The museum's collection includes some Gestapo identification photographs, but where do they come from? Not directly from Gestapo files. Those burned. The museum's photos come from copies that escaped the burn orders. Prisoners who stole their own photos, resistance members who smuggled copies, Allied soldiers who grabbed files, archives that duplicated records. Each photograph in the collection has a provenance story: how it survived, who preserved it, how it reached the museum. Similar pattern at Yad Vashem in Israel, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. They maintain extensive photographic archives, around 500,000 images, many from the Auschwitz collection. Wilhelm Brasse's photographs get duplicated there, distributed to Holocaust education centers worldwide, but original unique Gestapo office photographs, rare. Most of what survived already sits in the Auschwitz Museum, the Vienna Archive, scattered holdings at various national archives. The total global collection of surviving Gestapo photographs probably numbers under 100,000 images, from an original population that likely exceeded 5 million. If you value documented second half of the 20th century history and comprehensive research like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. Now back to the information. The Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act passes in 1998, United States legislation requiring declassification of Nazi war crimes records. The Japanese Imperial Government Records Act follows. The Nazi War Crimes and Japanese Imperial Government Records Interagency Working Group implements both acts. They take the broadest view identifying responsive records. March 23, 2000. The IWG releases German police records at the National Archives. Press release announces newly opened records. Box 4 of the Himmler collection contains selected records gathered by Gestapo counterintelligence officials. Reich Security Main Office, Amt 4E. British, Soviet, French, Polish intelligence activities in Nazi territories. After Germany conquered Poland fall 1939, Gestapo officials believed they neutralized Polish intelligence. 1942, they uncover a cache of Polish intelligence documents in Prague. Surprised, Polish agents had been gathering detailed military information, smuggling it to London. The declassified records confirm what historians suspected. The Gestapo documented everything, but the documentation itself mostly destroyed. The IWG press release states that 9,100 pages are now available. 9,000 pages. That's the residue. What survived from millions of pages created. The pages include wanted lists, card files, interrogation reports, some photographs, not many, photostat reproductions mostly. The originals burned. 2010, the Topography of Terror Documentation Center opens in Berlin May 6th. The building stands on the site of the former Gestapo and SS headquarters, Wilhelm and Prince Albrecht Strasse. After the war, the site fell into obscurity, buildings destroyed in bombing raids. By mid-1950s, their ruins were dynamited, torn down. The division of Berlin left the site on the edge of West Berlin. From 1961, the wall marked its northernmost extent. End of 1960s, an autodrome moved in unlicensed driving practice area, part of the area used by construction waste management. Only from end of 1970s was the historic location rediscovered. Survivors' associations pointed out its importance. 1987, an exhibition opens as part of Berlin's 750th anniversary, temporary installation. Exhibition trench along excavated basement walls facing Niederkirchner Strasse. The exhibition displays Berlin, 1933 to 1945, between propaganda and terror. The permanent documentation center takes 23 years to realize, opens 2010. The building contains permanent exhibition Topography of Terror, Gestapo, SS, and Reich security, main office on Wilhelm and Prince Albrecht Strasse. 4 exhibition areas, site tour with 15 stops. Material remnants include traces of late 19th century buildings, colonnade of former Prince Albrecht Palais, cellars of former SS canteen, vestiges of prison yard wall, floor monument over residual foundations of Gestapo prison, memorial to Berlin Wall, around 200 meters preserved along Niederkirchner Strasse. The exhibitions show photographs, many photographs, but where do they come from? Post-war documentation, liberation images, aerial reconnaissance, portraits of Nazi leaders, organizational charts, a few prisoner photographs. The museum acknowledges a problem. Most Gestapo operational photographs were destroyed. What visitors see represents fragments, pieces. The exhibition does its best with what survived, but the full photographic record? Gone. Think about what that means. The Gestapo arrested over 50,000 people in Vienna alone, 9,300 staff across all regional offices, hundreds of thousands of arrests across occupied Europe, millions of photographs created. Each arrest generated documentation, mugshot, fingerprints, interrogation notes. Many prisoners got photographed multiple times. Arrival, during interrogation, and before transport, after torture. The system produced a vast photographic archive of suffering, now mostly erased. Wilhelm Brasse lived until 2012. He died at 94 in Givik, the same town where he learned photography. After returning home post-liberation, he tried to resume portrait photography. Couldn't do it. The faces haunted him. He saw the dead in every living face. He abandoned photography completely, established a sausage casing business, moderately prosperous, never took another photograph. The small pre-war Kodak camera sat unused. In his final decades, he visited the Auschwitz Museum, talked with visitors about his experiences, the photographs he took, the ones he saved, the horror he documented, his testimony preserved on film. The Portraitist documentary aired January 1st, 2006 on Polish television. Proud to Present series. Brasse estimated he took between 40,000 and 50,000 photographs at Auschwitz. The museum holds 38,916. Where are the others? Ash fed into furnaces. January 1945. The percentages tell the story. Even when prisoners risked their lives to save photographs, even when liberation came in time, even then over 20% were lost. Multiply those losses across every Gestapo office, every regional headquarters, every field station. The destruction was systematic and nearly complete. Here's another angle. Think about the photographs that did survive. Who's in them? Primarily political prisoners? Resistance members? Jews sent to concentration camps? But what about all the others? The people arrested and released? The ones interrogated and let go? The informants? The collaborators? The thousands arrested on minor charges? Where are their photographs? Destroyed separately? Different filing system? Different disposition? The Gestapo maintained multiple photographic archives, operational files, personnel files, informant files, criminal files. Each system had different retention rules, different destruction priorities. When burn orders came down, someone decided which files to burn first. High-value intelligence, agent identities, collaborator networks. Those burned immediately. Prisoner mugshots, lower priority. Some survived longer, but most still burned. Vienna provides insight, the 12,000-person photographic index that survived. What categories did it cover? Various reasons for arrest, not just political prisoners, not just Jews, regular criminal cases, black market activity, border violations, smuggling. This suggests the photographic documentation was broader than just Holocaust victims. The Gestapo photographed everyone they processed. The survival of this collection happened by chance. City archives absorbed it. No burn order reached that specific storage location, or someone ignored the order, or the order came too late. Compare that to Berlin, capital of the Reich, Gestapo headquarters, center of the entire system. Almost nothing survives. Why? Because Berlin got bombed harder. Because headquarters got prioritized for document destruction. Because Heinrich Müller personally oversaw security. He knew what those files contained. He knew what they could prove. When the end came, he made sure they burned. The absence of Müller's body creates its own mystery. Did he die in Berlin? Did he escape? The mass grave theory says he died fighting. Got buried with 3,000 others, never identified. The defection theory says he went to Moscow, worked for Soviet intelligence, died there 1948. An unverified claim by Walter Schellenberg, no evidence either way. But here's what's certain. The chief of the Gestapo who ordered millions of photographs destroyed himself in photographs. Very few exist. Maybe a dozen images of Müller survive. For a man who ran the most documented police state in history, that's remarkable. He understood documentation, he controlled it, he erased himself along with his victims. Now think about the technology. 1933 to 1945. Photography was expensive, film cost money. Developing required chemicals, equipment, time. The Gestapo invested enormous resources in photographic documentation. Why? Control, identification, propaganda, fear. When you photograph someone, you reduce them to data, you strip their humanity, you make them a number. The three-pose mugshot became standard, front, left, and right. That format continues today in police departments worldwide. The Gestapo perfected it, made it systematic. Industrial-scale documentation of persecution, but the technology created a vulnerability. Photographs are physical objects. You can burn them. Unlike digital files, you can't just delete them, you must destroy the physical medium. Paper photographs burn at 451 degrees Fahrenheit. Film negatives burn at different temperatures depending on composition. Cellulose nitrate film extremely flammable, ignites easily, burns hot. Cellulose acetate film less flammable, requires higher temperatures. The Gestapo used both types. When burning large quantities of photographs in furnaces, the challenge wasn't starting the fire. It was maintaining airflow. Too much material in the fire suffocates itself. That's what saved the Auschwitz photographs. Wilhelm Brasse understood the chemistry. He fed the furnace wrong, deliberately. Wet paper first, creates steam, reduces temperature, then mass quantities overwhelming the combustion. When Bernhard Walter left the room, Brasse pulled out what hadn't burned. That trick couldn't work everywhere. In offices with more time and supervision, the burning was thorough. They used incinerators designed for the task. Fed photographs in batches, maintained proper airflow, verified complete combustion. The ash went into rivers or buried in pits. No trace. At Prince Albrechtstrasse 8, they had weeks to prepare. They knew the Soviets were coming. They burned systematically, office by office, file by file. The Allied bombing helped. Fires from incendiaries consumed what remained. By the time U.S. forces arrived in July 1945, the headquarters was a hollow shell filled with ash. The U.S. Army intelligence teams knew what they were looking for. They had lists, priority documents, intelligence files, organizational charts, financial records. Photographs came lower on the priority list. Why? Because photographs don't reveal operational details. They show faces, identities, evidence of crimes, important for prosecutions, but for intelligence gathering less valuable than documents describing networks, methods, sources. So when U.S. teams sifted through rubble, they grabbed papers first, photographs second, many photographs left behind, buried under debris. Eventually, bulldozed with the rubble when they cleared the site. Here's an irony. The Nazis were obsessed with documentation. They recorded everything: orders, reports, statistics, photographs. This documentation became evidence at Nuremberg. But if they had documented less, they would have been harder to prosecute. The photographs of atrocities, the transport lists, the gas chamber construction blueprints, all evidence. The Gestapo recognized this at the end. That's why they burned so much. But they didn't burn enough. Or they didn't burn the right things. Adolf Eichmann destroyed all archives of his Gestapo department, destroyed his wartime photographs. When captured by Americans, he presented himself as Otto Eckmann, junior SS officer. Nobody recognized him. He spent almost a year in a prisoner of war camp. Beginning of 1946, he escaped. The only photograph of Eichmann from the war years that survived was taken between 1941 and 1943. One photograph for the man who organized the deportation of millions. Eichmann reached Italy through rat lines. Hidden trails used by Nazi criminals. Catholic priests helped him get a Red Cross passport. Named Ricardo Clement, he fled to Argentina, lived there until 1960. Israeli Mossad hunted him. Former concentration camp prisoner Lothar Hermann heard from his daughter about a neighbor boy, Nicholas Clement. The boy boasted about father's heroic services to the Reich. Hermann reported to Israeli intelligence. They confirmed Ricardo Clement was Adolf Eichmann, May 1960. Mossad agents abducted him, flew him to Israel. Trial 1961, executed 1962. The trial sparked new interest in finding Nazi criminals. It also revealed how many escaped, how many hid, how many changed identities. The lack of photographs helped them. If comprehensive photographic documentation had survived, identifying fugitives would have been easier. But the Gestapo burned their own faces along with their victims. Joseph Mengele, angel of death from Auschwitz, conducted experiments on prisoners, twins especially, dissected live babies, castrated without anesthesia, electrocuted women testing endurance, tried changing eye color with chemical injections. personally selected prisoners for experiments, sent others to gas chambers immediately, believed involved in 400,000 murders. After the war, he was arrested near Nuremberg in civilian clothes. Americans didn't recognize him, no photographs in their files. He was released, fled to South America, lived in Brazil until drowning 1979, never captured, never tried. Klaus Barbie, butcher of Lyon, head of Gestapo in occupied French Lyon, executed Jews, tortured resistance members, raped women, used trained dogs for torture. After the war, escaped to Bolivia through rat lines, forged documents, named Klaus Altmann, lived there until 1983, finally extradited, tried. Life imprisonment, died 1991. Decades of freedom because photographs were scarce and identification difficult. The pattern repeats. Nazi war criminals escaped, changed names, disappeared. The lack of comprehensive photographic documentation aided them. If every Gestapo officer's face was on file, if every SS member had been photographed, if those photographs had survived, the manhunt would have been different, faster, more successful, but the photographs burned. Now here's what we're left with. Fragments. The Auschwitz collection, 38,000 faces. The Vienna Index, 12,000 individuals. Scattered files at National Archives. Copenhagen, a few hundred cards. Berlin Document Center, personnel files with membership photos, not operational photographs. United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Around 500,000 images, total collection, most from Liberation, not from Gestapo files. Yad Vashem, similar numbers, similar sources. Add them together, maybe 100,000 to 200,000 Gestapo photographs survive worldwide. From an original population that likely exceeded 5 million, survival rate 2 to 4%. What does that erasure mean? It means millions of people who were arrested, interrogated, deported, murdered, have no photographic evidence they were processed by the Gestapo. Transport lists name them, testimonies describe them, but their faces in Gestapo files? Gone. The Gestapo documented them, then destroyed the documentation. It's a second erasure. First they tried to erase the people, then they tried to erase the evidence they did it. But the erasure failed. Not completely. Testimonies survived, documents survived, some photographs survived. The Nuremberg Trials happened. War crimes prosecutions continued for decades. The Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act opened more files. Museums preserve what remains. Researchers continue finding new evidence. In 2013, a researcher discovers Heinrich Müller might be in a mass grave in Berlin-Mitte. The search continues. In 2000, the Vienna Photographic Index resurfaces after 55 years. More discoveries await. Archives across Eastern Europe continue opening. Russian archives slowly release materials. Polish archives process collections. Czech archives catalog holdings. Each year brings new documents to light. Sometimes photographs appear in an attic, in a basement, in a mislabeled archive box. Families discover them, donate them. The historical record grows, slowly, piece by piece, but the bulk is gone, destroyed intentionally, burned in furnaces, consumed in bombing raids, pulped in paper recycling, buried in rubble, dissolved in rivers. The photographs that would have shown the full scope of Gestapo operations, the faces of everyone they arrested, the documentation of every interrogation, that archive no longer exists. It existed once. From 1933 to 1945, it grew daily. Millions of images accumulating. Then, in weeks, it was destroyed. A bureaucratic decision made at the highest levels: burn everything, hide the evidence, erase the record. The survivors tell us what was lost. Wilhelm Brasse described photographing hundreds of thousands of faces. He remembered details, the terror in their eyes, the resignation, the defiance. Some prisoners tried to smile, some tried to look strong, some couldn't control their fear. Each face told a story. He captured those stories, then watched most of them burn. The weight of that haunted him for 67 years. Until his death in 2012, he carried the memory of the faces that didn't survive. The lesson is this: documentation can be a weapon. The Gestapo used photography to dehumanize, to control, to instill fear. But documentation also creates accountability. That's why they burned it. They knew those photographs were evidence of crimes, evidence of genocide, evidence that would condemn them. So they destroyed the evidence, but not all of it, not quite enough. The fragments that survived were enough to prosecute, enough to convict, enough to prove what happened. Today, the topography of terror in Berlin sits on the ruins of Gestapo headquarters. Visitors walk through exhibitions showing fragments of the photographic record. They see a few prisoner photos, a few mugshots, a few surveillance images, but mostly they see empty spaces, gaps in the archive. The exhibition acknowledges what's missing. The museum doesn't pretend the record is complete. It shows what survived and explains what didn't. At Auschwitz, the museum displays Wilhelm Brass's photographs, faces in 3 poses, front, left, right, camp numbers visible. Each face gets a database record, name if known, birth date if known, transport date if known, death date if known. Many fields remain empty. The information was destroyed along with most photographs, but these 38,000 faces survived. They represent the millions who didn't get photographed, or whose photographs burned. They stand as evidence, testimony, proof. The photographs that survive tell us more by their scarcity than they would by their abundance. Their rarity proves the destruction was real, systematic, nearly complete. The Gestapo succeeded in erasing most of their photographic record, but they failed to erase all of it. And that failure ensures we remember. The faces that survived bear witness for all the faces that didn't. The fragments of the archive document not just the crimes, but also the attempted cover-up. The burned photographs prove consciousness of guilt. They prove the perpetrators knew what they did was wrong, knew it was criminal, knew they would be held accountable if evidence survived, so they burned the evidence. But history has a way of surviving, in fragments, in testimonies, in the memories of survivors. In the handful of photographs that escaped the flames, in the ash pits we still excavate, in the archive boxes we keep discovering, the Gestapo photographs didn't all survive. Most burned, but enough remained to prove what happened, to document the system, to identify the perpetrators, to remember the victims. The attempted erasure failed. The evidence survived. Justice became possible. Not complete justice, not perfect justice, but justice nonetheless, built on fragments of a burned archive and the testimony of those who lived to tell the story.